I apologize for not speaking German. I really should have learned some German by now, but it's a language I've always found difficult. We formed Bien 39 years ago this month. And when we were very young at that time, I was wearing shorts, like a little boy, very young. And we thought it would be a discussion group that would last a few months, exchange messages and telephone calls. And we are still going. We've just had our 24th International Congress held in Rio de Janeiro. And I was reflecting, sitting here, on the journey that we have been on. And I thought it would be of interest to you that we had our Congress in Seoul in South Korea in 2016. And a man came up to me, little man, came up, said, "Dr. Stanley, please will you explain basic income? Please." I said, well, so I explained it. And then he asked me about 20 questions. And then he went away and he said, he came back the next day, he said, "I am going to stand for governor of my province on basic income." I said, okay, good luck. In our Congress in Hyderabad in 2019, he came. This time he was wearing a suit, tie, with an entourage of officials all saying, "Yes, sir, yes, sir." And he became governor. And when he became governor, he introduced a basic income for all young people. 125,000 young people in his province in Korea started receiving a basic income. He came up to me at that Congress and he said, "Dr. Stanley," I said, "Please call me Guy. Dr. Stanley, I am going to stand for president." I said, "For president?" And he said, "Yes, on basic income." I said, "Okay, good luck." He said, "Would you write some newspaper articles for me to support what we're saying?" I said, "Of course, of course." He went off. Then we had another Congress in Seoul in 2022. This time he came, and a lot of people, I think, Diana, you were there, were you not?
I missed it.
No, you missed that. So a lot of young people came, hundreds of them. And he came to the front. He went to the front, and he stood there. The Koreans are very formal. He stood there and he said, "I failed." And I put my hand up. And I said, no, can I talk? So I went to the front. I said, "You did not fail. You got 49.5% of the vote. 49.5%. I said, "Almost all politicians in the world would give their arm to get 49.5%. I said, "The rich mobilized against you, the Americans mobilized against you, and you nearly won." And I said, "Next time you will win." Shortly after our Congress, he was in the street and a right-wing neo-fascist stabbed him with a knife. We thought he would die. This June, he was elected president of Korea. Isn't that a good story? He's now president of Korea. And he got 54% of the vote. So one of our members has become a president of his country. That can happen anywhere. And we have been on a long journey where we've been ridiculed, we've been attacked, we've been accused of all sorts of things. But there's something in the air which gives me confidence. And I want to remind us of the journey. When we formed Bien in the mid-1980s, it was the time of the neoliberal economics revolution associated with Thatcher and Ronald Reagan and a new right, Friedrich Hayek and Milton Friedman and all those people. And it was clear to me that this was the end of the road for social democracy. Social democracy and state communism did not have the answers for the time. And actually, since that time, one of the biggest obstacles we have had on the journey are the Social Democrats, the laborists, the people who want everybody to be in jobs, jobs, jobs. Everybody be in jobs. Whereas throughout history, humanity has been struggling to avoid being in jobs for over 2,000 years. But what happened in the 1990s was that capitalism changed to what I've called in my books rentier capitalism. Don't know if that can be translated into German, but the essence of rentier capitalism is that more and more of the income, wealth, and power goes to the owners of property. Physical property, financial property, and intellectual property. And less of the income all over the world is going to those who perform labor and work. Now, as that happened, one could see the growth of insecurities. Millions and millions of people started to suffer from existential insecurity, an incapacity to feel in control of their lives, an incapacity to feel mentally stable, an incapacity to look to tomorrow with confidence. And in my books, I analyzed how the new global class structure was taking shape. And I would remind all of us, you cannot understand the need for basic income without class analysis. Please remember that. Now, the class structure that emerged under rentier capitalism has produced a dystopia which is genuinely frightening. What happened was a plutocracy started to form, the Elon Musks and the other types, underneath an elite serving them, getting rent but serving them, a shrinking salariat with full-time employment and salaries and pensions and things like that, shrinking, the old proletariat disappearing, and the precariat evolving. And the precariat must be understood in three dimensions. I haven't got time to go into all the details. You will find them in my books if you find it of interest. But essentially, if you're in the precariat today, you are living a life of unstable labor, having to do a lot of work that is not recognized as work, having to do a lot of work for the state, having to accept that you have a level of education above the level of labor you will get in those jobs. And second, you have volatile money income, no wage benefits, no non-wage benefits, and you're living permanently on the edge of unsustainable debt. One mistake, one illness, one accident, and you could be like the bag lady with all your belongings in 2 paper bags in the street. Millions of people today are living with that nightmare every day. And we haven't come to terms with the need to rectify that situation. But the precariat, as I wrote in 2011, is split into 3 groups. And on page 1 of my book on the precariat of 2011, I said, unless progressive forces understand the needs and aspirations of the precariat, we will see the emergence of a political monster. Those were the exact words I used, political monster. And in 2016, I received an email saying the Bilderberg Group wishes you to come and address it in secret. I said, this must be a leftist friend of mine joking, teasing me, pulling my leg. Because those of you who don't know, the Bilderberg Group is the elite, far-right, right people, wealthy elites of the world. So I took no notice. 2 days later, they called me at my home when I was in the kitchen. And they said, no, we want you to come to Bremen. It's a confidential secret. I consulted all my progressive friends. I may have consulted Klaus, I don't remember. So they all said, you've got to go. You've got to go. So imagine how it felt in April 2016 in this wonderful, huge hotel surrounded by guards and things, addressing this roughly the same number of people, with Henry Kissinger sitting in front of me there, with the head of the CIA, with several prime ministers, with the head of Google, the head of the World Bank, and Senator Lindsey Graham and Peter Thiel, with whom I sat next to in the 3 days. Peter Thiel was the main funder of Donald Trump. He was the billionaire funding Donald Trump. His protege was a certain man called J.D. Vance. You know about him. And I spent 3 days talking with this Peter Thiel. And I realized, excuse me if I use French, the bastards understood the precariat better than the left. Because they understood that the part of the precariat I call the atavists, the less educated, who are falling out of the old proletariat, falling out of old working class communities, you could play on their fears and their anger and promise to bring back yesterday, MAGA, and the equivalents around Europe. They understood that. Whereas the left has not understood that it has to appeal to the progressives in the precariat, the educated, young, the women who have no future. Where is the left? Where is the left promising a vision of a future good society where we live better? We have a slow time movement, we have education, we have commoning, we work on our care. All of these things are absent from the old social democrats who want us to be in those jobs. And so we have a situation where we have the emergence of what I'm saying in my new work, and I've got an advanced copy of it. There's no one more boring than when they've just written a book. But I'm talking about the growth of a plutarchy. This is the first time in history, in the United States, but not only in the United States, where a plutarchy is the government. A plutarchy is the rule by the super wealthy in the interests of the super wealthy. But in order to gain power, they have had to appeal to the atavists in the precariat. And they've been doing that very well. Farage is doing it, Orban is doing it, your people are doing it, the AfD is doing it, Meloni is doing it, Marine Le Pen is doing it. And they have come to power, but don't underestimate them. The one thing they hate is democracy. And the interesting thing is, this Peter Thiel wrote an article saying that freedom is incompatible with democracy. What he means by freedom is freedom to make a lot of money, freedom to be powerful. And a new thing, which I'm sort of analysing, and many of you, I hope, would find it of interest, is that at the moment, the far right, the plutocrats, are waging a war on empathy. Empathy is the foundational principle of humanity. It's the ability to put yourself in the shoes of someone else, feel their suffering, understand their point. You may not agree with them, but to be able to understand, to be aware. And this lack of respect for empathy has been called by the late Charlie Kirk. He said, it is a man-made, modern, dangerous phenomenon, empathy. Caring for other people is apparently dangerous. And you say, now wait, what is this? And I've been reading all what they've been saying, the Peter Thiels, the Elon Musks, the various others, the Trumps, the various people. And basically what they are doing is a new form of eugenics. They're eugenicists. And why they are eugenicists is that they nurture a phenomenon which nobody so far has analysed enough. And the Greek word for it was aporophobia. Aporophobia is hatred of those without resources. Not just a hatred of the poor, but a hatred of those without the resources to live a life of dignity. They genuinely hate them because they can demonize them and say, look, your insecurities are due to them, the enemies, the illegals, the undocumented, the welfare claimants, the women with disabilities, etc., 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 Muslims. And we, on the left, have not yet had a coherent response to this phenomenon of aporophobia. It's not xenophobia. Xenophobia is you hate all foreigners. Oh no, if you're rich, you're not a foreigner anywhere. You're not a foreigner anywhere. Oh, come in. We give you a gold card or whatever. But if you have no resources, you are a denizen, not a citizen ever. And we have a multiple sense of denizenship instead of citizenship. I heard one of the earlier speakers talking about different layers of people, and they're absolutely right. What we are seeing is a deliberate, systematic division of society into those who have rights, and those who have some rights but not many rights, and those who have no rights at all. Now, into this vacuum, we have to recalibrate what we're promising with basic income. I've always argued that basic income is not a standalone policy. It must be seen as part of a coherent strategy of transformation, transforming the type of society we want our children and grandchildren to be growing up in. Transforming in the sense of emancipating our control of time, which is why I've written a book called The Politics of Time. Because I think, historically, the great era of modernity came at the end of the 19th century, when suddenly only labour counted as work. The communists said it, the social democrats said it, the trade unions said it, all the groups in dominant positions, and your speech earlier, Melina, was very much spot on, understanding this. And in that context, now we need to rescue work. We all want to work, but we don't necessarily want to labour in jobs. And we want to rescue the wonderful idea of commoning, the commons. The commons belong to all of us. And yet one of the greatest tragedies of the past 40 years has been the plunder of the commons. Taking of the commons, privatizing, financializing the commons. The commons belong to us. And we should make that the foundational principle, commons justice. And my latest book, called Human Capital, which will get me into a lot of trouble when it comes out in January, is basically saying one of the reasons we have seen this drift to the far right is that our education system has been captured by capitalism. It's been converted into a huge global factory system for churning out people to try and make more money than other people, be more competitive. And in the process, as I document, appreciation of the arts, appreciation of music and culture and philosophy and history has all been thrown away. You don't need those things, they don't get you more money. So they go. And if you produce young students coming out without a sense of their history, without a sense of their culture, without a sense of empathy, without a sense of paideia, appreciation of the pursuit of truth, then you will get a fascist tyranny. And this is what we're seeing at the moment. And we have to change our rhetoric accordingly to present a vision and say, look, we need to rescue our education system. We need to gain control of our time. We need to provide and promise security to the precariat, all parts of the precariat. And in the course of my 39 years, I've been fortunate or unfortunate, as Diana and Klaus and a few of you may know, to have been involved in pilots, basic income experiments around the world. The biggest one we did was in India, also several in Africa. Been involved in the Finland one, just finished one in Wales with the government of Wales. There are over 100 basic income pilots and experiments going at this moment. And those are showing consistent results. If you give people basic security, they become more altruistic. They become more tolerant. They slow down. Their mental health improves. They feel real freedom. They feel a sense of justice. And therefore they want other people to have that. If you provide people with basic income, in a sense, they become better people. Now we're seeing the results. I can give you catalogue commitments on the data. We've seen that. But the challenge today is political. We must defeat the Plutarchy. We must take them on and defy their disgusting rhetoric, disgusting actions. We must expose them. We must not do what people like Keir Starmer is doing, going along with it and saying, all right, we'll do this. Their basic surrender. They're surrendering to this far-right ideology. That's not what we should do. And I believe there are thousands and millions of people out there waiting for that message. I'm very privileged, if you like. I've given over 800 talks on basic income and the precariat in the last decade. And I find that I've spoken in 154 different universities in 49 countries. And everywhere, I find the same energy. I find the young particularly saying, why aren't our politicians taking the lead? Why? What's wrong with them? And that's what we've got to keep on saying. But I'm actually optimistic. President Lee is the first president from Bien, but I hope he will not be the last. Thank you very much.